Meeting of the Manhattan Community Board One's Land Use Zoning and Economic Development Committee. Patrick Cannell, Chair of the committee, Dr. Corey, co-chair, is here with me along with CB1 Chair Tammy Melton. There are two items on our agenda tonight, no resolutions.
Yes, resolution on chunk five.
I'm sorry, excuse me. Oh. Yep. Two items. The first is a feasibility study for a contiguous East River waterfront park by David Ludwig, who is CB1's community planning company, sponsored of course by the Fund for the City of New York. David, you want to begin, or Tammy, do you want to introduce David?
So I'll introduce David. I'd love to. Thank you. David has been working with us for several months. Some of you may remember the presentation we had. We had two urban fellows this year, which we were fortunate to have. One did an analysis of public green space in relation to population growth, which would clearly show you that on the northeast side and the east side, we are desperate for public space. There is a dearth of it, which dovetails beautifully in the work that David has been doing. David Ludwig is a graduate student at Pratt. And so he had a different project to work on for the community board for conversations that we've been having for a long time. And I'm going to have him take it away because I don't want to spoil the fun.
Great, David. Could just pull up the presentation. Should be on the Google Chrome. It's the ERW. It's the it's That's the clicker right there.
Nope, it's right next to you. Should be in that little container. There you go.
Great.
Yep. There you go.
There we go. Okay. Okay. Hello, thank you all for being here. As Tammy said, my name is David Ludwig. I'm actually a recent graduate from Pratt Institute's Urban and Community Planning, master's program. I undertook this project as a community planning fellow for the Fund for the City of New York. And just a little background on the fund. The fellowship are focused on strengthening the capacity of government agencies and nonprofits by providing them with resources and students like myself to conduct research, field work, and other relevant projects. As part of my fellowship, I've been working on this study of parks governance structures from around the city to evaluate what lessons can be learned from them and how they might be applied to the East River waterfront. I originally presented this to members of what's become known as the East River Working Group over the past few months. So with that, I will get right into it. So the problem, the East River waterfront as we know it is set to undergo massive changes over the course of the next few decades. As I'm sure many of you have experienced, Superstorm Sandy brought the issue of coastal resiliency to the forefront of many people's minds. And another important stakeholder, the EDC, is planning to address this issue through the FIDI Seaport Plan south of the Brooklyn Bridge and the East Side Coastal Resiliency Plan north of Pier 36, as you can see from the map at the top of the slide. So the East Side Coastal Resiliency Project has already seen the closure of large sections of open space in the area, and the FIDI Seaport Plan, on the other hand, has yet to begin. And while the plan does promise to create new open space south of the Brooklyn Bridge, this is the lowest priority of the project and is set to take 15 to 20 years to fully implement. You can see in this slide just some photos of what this looked like just about a month or two ago. There's already construction underway. There's a lot of obstructions, not to mention there's not much shade, not much seating, but I'll get into that. So while these projects are clearly necessary, they also threaten to put even more pressure on the little active and passive recreation space that's currently available in the area. Meanwhile, the sites along the East River are administered in a piecemeal fashion by an alphabet soup of the city and sometimes federal agencies. Much of the revenue that's generated in this section of the East River, rather than being invested back into the maintenance and administration of it, returns instead to the city's general fund or to the private tenants leasing land along the waterfront. So another barrier to the improvement of the waterfront's open spaces is the continuing decline of the Parks Department's budget. This has been an ongoing trend for decades, and as you can see from the graph at the right, while the overall available funds for the Parks Department has increased in recent years, it still sits well below the percentage of the total budget, even during the city's worst fiscal crisis in the 1970s. So I think it's also very important to note that according to US Census data that I gathered, across Lower Manhattan, the number of people aged 18 and below and 65 and above has increased between 2010 and 2020. This is especially true for those aged 65 and over. At the same time, a large proportion of people in Lower Manhattan have to travel more than half a mile to access outdoor recreation space that is at least an acre in size. More than half a mile is about a 10-minute walk for most people on average. So with all that in mind, I'll get into a little more detail around what I consider to be the study area for this project. This map shows the major points of interest that I've identified along the East River waterfront. And this map shows the extremely patchwork administration of these sites as it stands. You can see that the federal administration is involved. You have the DOT, EDC, NYC Parks, the Department of Sanitation, and Fire and EMS. It's a mishmash of a lot of different organizations, especially at Pier 36, as you can see. So with all this in mind, I set out to establish my own goals and methodology for achieving these goals. The focus of this project is an assessment of what governance structures are currently in use around the city in terms of public-private partnerships. I set out to understand what sources of revenue are supporting these parks, and amongst the structures I've analyzed, which would provide the most benefit to the constituencies of the East River waterfront. My methodology for analysis was based on the use of a few case studies. After getting input from the working group who I've been working with for the past few months, I selected a number of parks and set out to analyze their governance structures through their bylaws, internal documents, and operating agreements they might have with the city or the Parks Department. I also used publicly available 990 tax forms to break down their sources of revenue. So this chart at the right, might be a little bit hard to see, apologies for that, is from a study conducted by Rebuild by Design in 2018. And my work is in part building on this report. So they outline some of the governance types for parks that are in use around the city and in the country more broadly. This helped me to identify the parks that I would use as case studies, these being Central Park Conservancy, the Bronx River Alliance, Hudson River Park, and the Brooklyn Bridge Park. The study concludes that and so keep in mind, this is from 2018, things have changed, but the study initially concluded that the Bronx River Alliance is the strongest model to emulate. There are some caveats to that I'll bring up going forward. But I think it's important to note that since starting this project, I have had a lot of trouble getting in contact with them. And some of the information around the organization is a bit dated compared to the other parks that I investigated. So collecting this information was mainly meant to emphasize the wide variety of administrative forms and to give people an idea of what's out there, the lengths these organizations had to go through to become established, and some of the positives and negatives associated with each. They're clearly not all directly comparable to the East River waterfront, but understanding their idiosyncrasies is important for this early phase of planning for a similar project for the East River waterfront, or a similar organization for the East River waterfront. So, there we go. Okay, so this takes me to a brief history of the Central Park Conservancy. So, main thing to point out here is just how long it took for them to become established. Beginning in the 1970s, the park fell into a state of disrepair. Piecemeal efforts are undertaken to restore some of the park, but it's not until 1985 that the Conservancy is established, and their initial purview is focused on supporting the Parks Department. By 1991, further cuts to the Parks Department led to the Conservancy taking on a much larger role. By 1998, the Parks Department would eventually hand over full control of Central Park to the Conservancy, whose responsibilities would eventually include fundraising, operations and maintenance, and the management of capital projects, amongst other things. So more recently, in the 23-24 fiscal year, Central Park Conservancy took in just about $200 million, which works out to spending approximately $237,500 per acre. Over half of this came from individual contributions to the Conservancy. Another important source of revenue comes from their projects, this being about $25 million, and based on their 990 form, was generated from completed improvement projects around the park in accordance with their mission. That's based on language from the 990 form. Other revenue mostly represents investment dividends and the sale of those investments. So moving on, Bronx River Alliance was officially established in 2001, although it has its roots all the way back in action dating back to 1974, when local activists got together to clean up the Bronx River after it was deemed unsuitable for any recreational activity. The precursor to the Alliance, the Bronx River Working Group, brought together 60 community groups and small businesses to support the work of what would eventually become the Alliance. And then between its founding in 2001 and 2021, when the most recent data was available, the Alliance has raised over $100 million and added 22 acres of greenway to the Bronx River. So in the 2020 to 21 fiscal year, the Alliance's revenue amounted to about $1.23 million, working out to about $27,000 per acre. The vast majority of this revenue came from fundraising, individual contributions, and government grants. Before I move on, I think it's worth noting, like I mentioned earlier, 2020 to 21 fiscal data was the most up-to-date information that I could find on the organization. At the moment, they seem to be somewhat less active than in previous years, at least when it comes to outside communication. So moving on, the Hudson River Park Trust was created through state legislation signed by Governor Pataki in 1998. A plan for a park on the west side of Lower Manhattan dates back to 1974, as the piers there fell into complete disuse. Commercial development was baked into the proposal as a means to fund the park's operations and maintenance. Notably, in 2013, the park was able to sell some of its air rights in order to enable development that would aid in the funding of operations and maintenance. And so in 22 to 23 fiscal year, Hudson River Parks Trust total revenue was about $55.9 million, amounting to $101.7 thousand per acre. A little less than half of this revenue comes from lease and occupancy permits for the commercial development on the park. Parking and fees are another sizable chunk of revenue as well. So Friends of Hudson River Park Trust, a nonprofit that engages in fundraising for the park, raises a further $12 million, amounting to another 7 to 8% of their total revenue. And that brings me to the Brooklyn Bridge Park, whose roots are in the Port Authority's desire to sell Piers 1 through 6 for commercial development. Members of the Brooklyn Heights Association sought to see this turned into parkland for fear of privatization of the waterfront. They ultimately succeeded, but not without some issues. In 2002, Governor Pataki and Mayor Bloomberg signed a memorandum of understanding which dedicated Piers 1 through 5 for parkland. However, a 2006 lawsuit found that it was the general project plan, which in the case of the Brooklyn Bridge Park was created by a subsidiary of the EDC, and not the MOU, which was originally signed in 2002. That was what the general project plan was what decided what would and would not be parkland. And so the general project plan allowed for commercial development where the MOU did not, resulting in the construction of a hotel and commercial housing. And this is a very important precedent for commercial development on what is essentially parkland. So in In 22 to 23 fiscal year, Brooklyn Bridge Park's total revenue was about $30 million, amounting to $364,000 per acre. More than half of this revenue, 59.1%, came from payment in lieu of taxes paid by the commercial developments to the park itself. The rest of their income comes from lease interest income, rents, and permits, as well as other fees. And so I know that was a lot of information, and thank you for bearing with me. There's a lot going on there. And so just to take a second to synthesize some of this information. So starting with the Central Park Conservancy. They started out as more of a supplementary organization that helped the Parks Department make ends meet. Eventually, they transitioned into managing the entire park, including fundraising, operations, and maintenance, programming, events, and the design and bidding for capital projects. In more detail about their governance structure, they are governed by 53 trustees, of whom 5 are ex officio members, basically filled by positions held by elected officials, and then 5 more are mayoral appointments. According to the bylaws of the Central Park Conservancy, 2 of the 53 trustees are elected to represent the interests of the surrounding communities, and they have equal voting power when compared to the other trustees. The vast majority of the revenue, as I mentioned, comes from individual donations. However, any revenue generated from concessions within the park is stipulated to go directly back into it. Central Park has always been known as a world-class park, and this is obviously a huge strength for the Conservancy's fundraising efforts. It's not an easy one-to-one comparison when looking at East River Park, but it's an important thing to know. Obviously, the East River waterfront doesn't have the exact same reputation as Central Park, but it still holds weight in the imagination of New Yorkers as an important historical site. Back. So the Bronx River Alliance was essentially filling a gap. They were cleaning up the Bronx River when city organizations wouldn't. Their role as a partner of the Parks Department and a liaison between the public and private sphere means that community control is ostensibly strong. This is also evidenced by the fact that the working group on the ground, these are split into 4 groups: education, ecology, greenway, and outreach, directly elect 8 of the 25 members to the board of directors. The board's responsibilities of deciding organizational policy also ensures that their original mission stays at the core of their work, this being to clean up the river and enhance people's ability to enjoy it for recreation and leisure. So one of their major strengths is their consistent engagement with local stakeholders. As there isn't much revenue to be captured from along the Bronx River, this engagement has been of major importance to their fundraising capabilities. On the other hand, the Alliance doesn't have many assets when compared to the East River waterfront from which to extract revenue, and as such, they're fairly reliant on grants from the Parks Department and their own ability to fundraise. So while it's clear that the organization has made huge improvements to the river since the 1970s, it can be difficult to motivate people to continually donate to an asset that they can enjoy in the future rather than right now, when compared to something like Central Park. So where these 2 parks were created through community organization and eventually given more responsibility over time by the Parks Department and by the city, the next 2, Brooklyn Bridge Park and Hudson River Park Trust, were created through legislative acts at the city and state levels. Something that, as I've noticed, as I've acknowledged, could take decades to accomplish. However, I believe there are still important lessons to be learned from their experiences. So Brooklyn Bridge Park was created through an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, between the city and state. The MOU stipulated that the park had to be fully self-funding, which ultimately decided for them whether or not there would be commercial development within the park. Still, this ensures that the park always has money for operations and maintenance, something that is a major concern along the waterfront. There is a 17-member board of directors, with 14 of these directors being appointed by the mayor, deputy mayor, and deputy mayor of housing and economic development. Also important to note, 8 years after the founding of the park, an advisory council was eventually formed However, their recommendations to the board are ultimately non-binding. In an interview I had with a member of the advisory board, I was told that the relationship can sometimes be competitive as their priorities tend to differ. The advisory board generally being made up of people living near the park. But he did mention, the person that I interviewed, that they were responsive to a lot of their complaints, even if there wasn't as much as they could do. They were generally willing to acknowledge, okay, this is a problem, we'll do what we can, but there's only so much we can do. So ultimately, the governance structure is not the most friendly to community control when considering the other two, especially with so many board members being appointed by people in higher office, like the mayor. So Hudson River Park Trust, finally, also created through legislation, this time passing through the state legislature. This was a years-long process and took multiple attempts until it was signed. The park is composed of a 13-member board with 5 members being appointed by the governor and 3 by the Manhattan Borough President. There's also a 40-member advisory council on which the city and state have equal representation, each having 5 members. However, similar to the Brooklyn Bridge Park, this council's opinions are non-binding in nature. So one of the park's major advantages was it's being designed on land that was almost completely underdeveloped. What they've built today takes into account things from accessibility to micromobility. Nearly all of these improvements were funded through revenues generated within the park. However, it seems that community control isn't as much of a priority given the fact that the advisory council's recommendations are non-binding and that a majority of board members are appointed by local and state officials rather than through a majority of vote. And that brings me to my own SWOT analysis. How can these lessons be applied to the East River waterfront? And thank you for bearing with me. I know there's a lot of information here. So my SWOT analysis was conducted to get a sense of the East River strengths and weaknesses, as well as the potential threats and opportunities for the waterfront. So beginning with strengths, the waterfront between Pier 42 Park and Whitehall Terminal is only 17 acres, a much more manageable size than some of the spaces that we've looked at so far. The active and passive recreation spaces that are there are well liked by the community, well kept for the most part, and have amenities that cater to a wide variety of people, a wide range of people. Based on interviews I conducted with someone from EDC, who currently administers a large sections of the waterfront, they are currently looking for a trusted partner to engage in the works of Parks Administration. They have said to me and to others in the working group, they're not in the business of Parks Administration, and they want someone to assist in this administration and you know, helping in fundraising, helping in operations and maintenance. Not to mention, there is already a lot of strong, well-established advocacy groups that are already dotting the waterfront. In terms of weaknesses, right now, the available amenities are concentrated to one asset along the waterfront rather than being spread out, this being East River Park, south of 14th Street to Pier 41. This is already putting a lot of pressure on this space, and this will only increase as more coastal resiliency work is undertaken and more improvements are undertaken over the next 15 to 20 years. The other active and passive recreation spaces that are along the waterfront are extremely disconnected from each other, and navigating between them leaves a lot to be desired. If you've walked through there, there are sections that are incredibly narrow, that are, you know, taken up by construction that's been there for months or years in some cases. It's not, in certain areas, it's just not a pleasant experience. Additionally, something that was brought up to me multiple times by people in the working group and other constituents, there is no indoor recreation space available anywhere along the waterfront, meaning that this area is really only suitable for the summer months. And even then, there are large sections that lack shade infrastructure. As we know, it's going to keep getting hotter in New York. We've already experienced a really significant heat wave. Shade, especially outdoors, will be essential for people that are looking to cool off from their apartments. So looking at opportunities, creating and improving connections between the available active and passive recreation space will ultimately alleviate pressure on the ones that are already generating the most traffic. So if an organization is to come out of these meetings or the working group, it can work to enshrine community control as a major priority from the get-go, rather than adding it on as an addendum later on. And as of now, there are drafted principles which are very clear in enshrining community control as one of the most important goals of a nonprofit organization to in this work. As I mentioned, air rights can be a significant and important source of income. There are air rights over the piers, and this can serve as a valuable potential source of capital to begin making improvements tomorrow if this were to be established. Also important to note is that myself and others in the working group have identified the Newmarket site, and I can refer back to the map in just a few minutes, near Pier 17 as a strong contender for an indoor community recreation space, something that the waterfront is sorely lacking right now. Additionally, we already know that the Marine Terminal, Pier 15, Pier 36, and the Seaport Marketplace are generating around $4 million in revenue. Just from that $4 million in revenue alone, that could amount to $235,000 per acre of available revenue. This is referring to the 17 acres of the waterfront that would go below Pier 14, so not including East River Park proper, but it's an important source of revenue, and that's the area that needs the most improvement. In terms of precedents, EDC has used private money for the Seaport. When the Howard Hughes Corporation, one of the private tenants along the East River waterfront, moved in, they eventually gave $250,000 for the Seaport Museum. EDC also did something similar with the Hudson River Park Trust. And so that brings us to potential threats. Achieving self-sufficiency will be important given limited resources at the Parks Department. This will require identifying other sources of revenue for the waterfront and establishing partnerships early. As I'm sure many are aware, the current federal administration is threatening the funding of coastal resiliency projects, something that the city at large will have to contend with. If these resiliency projects do secure funding, that's however likely that is, they are likely to deactivate potential sources of revenue along the waterfront, and that's something that will have to be planned for if this organization is to be created. Finally, at the moment, the city's budget ultimately forces neighborhoods to compete against one another for limited financial resources for open space, amongst other things. And as a result of its declining commitment to the Parks Department. The revenues that come in from activity on the waterfront right now go back to the city's general fund, and the communities that host these revenues get no say in how that money is used. So this is a source of the segmentation and separation that we see now, and the very piecemeal administration of the waterfront. And this is something that will have to be overcome through negotiations with EDC. And this concludes my own portion of the presentation. In the working group version of this presentation, we opened it up to the group to bring up their own observations, bring up their own concerns. I have a few thoughts, but if there are any questions or comments, I would encourage you to, open it up and we can start that conversation. Thank you all so much for listening.
Wow, thank you. That was really well done. Just your presentation skills alone are pretty top notch, but that's an awesome presentation, very succinct, very informative. I don't have any questions about it. Obviously, a lot of wheels are turning, as I'm sure everybody else is too. I can't see if there are folks online, but while I look, let me see if there are any folks in the room who have questions, board members or committee members who might have questions. Yes.
Yeah, well done. Thank you for that. Could you go to the map and just
Yes, it was just
make it be clear what the study area is that you're talking about?
Yeah.
Where are the 17 acres specifically on
Yes.
the map?
So here we go. Okay, So the 17 acres go from Pier 40, what is now Pier 42 Park to
Wait, Pier
Yes.
42 Park, okay.
to the Staten Island Ferry Terminal. The study area is obviously larger. It encompasses East River Park because that's what's absorbing so much of the traffic right now as a result of the construction that's happening, as a result of the piecemeal organization, and as a result of the disconnectivity that's in the lower portion of the study area. So, obviously it extends beyond this community board. But in a study that I found, and it's a little bit dated, it was from 2002 or three. It said that the between Pier 42 and the Staten Island Ferry Terminal was 17 acres.
So whatever thoughts or concepts that will be proposed or discussed, are they intended to end at Pier 42 or extend up to East River Park?
So it's a big question, and yes, Tammy, yeah, please.
I can answer that.
Still?
So the last meeting in the working group decided that the creation of the new park by vote and agreement would be from Pier 36 down to an end at the edge of the Battery Maritime, a little bit shy. Because Pier 42 has a group that already works with Pier 42, and the East River Park team up there, they would all like to see how they are managing with the new structures and the new process and see how that goes. It's not that they're not included, but they are not included at this time. The road was left open that if they wanted to partner, we would partner together up north and south. But the goal is to be able to cover with some kind of consistency and holistic view and approach. So there is actual park space from 36 down to the Battery, and that the issues that are so well reviewed in terms of safety and public space and maintenance and other things have new holistic connections north and south.
Yeah, that was an issue that came up a lot in the working group meetings is East River Park in this, study, when I was studying it, it was part of the study area. Is it part of this working group? That was to be determined. And so, yeah.
And what sort of thoughts does the group have in terms of kind of structure to apply here and how it could be put together, given, I think, varying natures of jurisdiction that exist along this waterfront here?
So there,
You go.
okay. So right now there has been a drafted principles, and those principles have very clearly listed community leadership and engagement, prioritization of local residents, and resiliency and sustainability as like their main guiding values. So with that in mind, Bronx River Alliance presents the most direct analog to what people would want. Something that was brought up time and time again in different working group meetings was the issue of permitting for local groups to have access to the ball fields at East River Park. And what came out of that was a desire to see that process brought into the community's hands. And so Bronx River Alliance, although, lately they've been a little less responsive, and from what I've heard more recently, they have been not as satisfied with their relationship with the Parks Department. But regardless, they present the most analogous organizational type for the East River because of that emphasis on community control.
And what would it take to implement that here? To implement that kind of structure? Who would you have to deal with? What organizations would you have to deal with?
So it would be
Administration.
EDC is one of the major ones because they're the people who have been emphasizing the most that we don't do parks administration. That's not our business. It's not our game. We want a trusted partner who can engage in this kind of work. And so it would involve working with them, and it would involve getting to, developing partnerships with whatever small nonprofits, small community organizations that are already in existence around the study area. And so getting them on board, consolidating their voices and their, establishing a common set of goals would be, I think, the first step.
So, but one city administration, EDC.
EDC, NYC Parks, Tammy.
No other, it's not the city, there's no state requirement or.
No,
This is city.
no, but EDC and Parks have been at the working group meetings all along. EDC is willing to help guide and, not guide, I don't think, provide input back to us for questions moving ahead. The fastest way to begin may be to start with a 501c3. And, there are conversations happening now for those kinds of things. We're about to go through sort of like a naming process to try and get input. It can always be changed later. There's always DBAs and things, but trying to get that off the ground so we have a functioning way to gather money to begin working on projects. Because you can get capital funds out of the city, which is great, but capital funds are very different from expense funds and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Can you guys see my hand? Oh,
One suggestion, at least
Paul,
if I may.
yeah.
Just the chart about the percentage of the parks budget, of the city budget. I would suggest a more relevant statistic would be the dollars per acre over the course of time. The percent of city budget, I don't find to be that relevant
Fair enough.
and telling in terms of whether it's sufficient or insufficient. So I would suggest that.
Sounds good. Appreciate that.
Okay. Laura?
hi, I'm Laura Starr. I'm the landscape architect on the community board, and I started my career at the Central Park Conservancy during its formative years. I worked there from 1984 to 1996. And I would love to be a resource to your working group about public-private partnerships because I am an expert in them. And I would like to offer a few things about what I learned from the Central Park Conservancy. And I know that it tilts more towards this kind of like boardroom elite situation than what you're describing here with the Bronx River Alliance and the local community. However, money is really important. And I think one thing that the Conservancy did very effectively is they had extremely strong leadership. Like it was founded by somebody who had an urban planning background from Yale, that's Betsy Barlow Rogers, and she assembled a board of directors that included community people, agency people, and like major business leaders who really knew how to run big organizations and understood money and raising money. And, like they insisted on a master plan, they got input, they published a management and restoration plan for the park. And, I have to say, I learned so much working there from people who were successful in the corporate world because they know how to run organizations. And so I think that, as community up this wants to be, I think also the park is around gargantuan sums of money down here in the financial district, both from the residential conversions and also from the corporate and the tourist, sectors. And somehow this park really has to capture that to be successful. And one thing I've learned, because I've been working at the Battery now with Worry Price for 29 years. And by the way, like you might want to consider the Battery because they're looking for somebody to succeed Worry, and they're having their own kind of transition issues. So it might be worth, I'm not speaking for the Battery, but one thing I've noticed is her major donors come from the Upper East Side. There's very few major donors that are residences in Lower Manhattan. It's not that type of community. And so I think that, to try to get the big bucks that we need, we have to really work with the Alliance for Downtown New York and, you know, the business community as well as the residential communities, and find a way to
I'm
do this
happy.
gentrifying that, you know, without feeling like we're like going to come in and she everything and take it away from the community.
Laura, I'm happy to give you updates on the working group and catch you up afterwards.
Yeah, I
Okay.
would love to be part of it. I mean, I just have so much experience with this, and I think it's a fantastic presentation and a really worthy effort. And I mean, are you thinking of doing a master plan that would address the open spaces with or without the resilience work, or how would this planning
Yes.
relate to the resilience
Yes.
work?
There's been a lot of master plans already floated out there, but yes, there would be one directly for this space, done by the organization with community feedback and using the resources Rebuilt by Design looked at parts of it. There's, I forget the name of the architecture firm that really did a holistic look from East River Park down to the Battery. They did a presentation and stuff.
My wife's.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of, there are a lot of assets out there, but you can't make any one asset work until you have the organization up and running to be able to evaluate and run charrettes and, you know, really understand what's important to the community here. And also remember that the Downtown Alliance has a geographic boundary, and they have, they must stay within their geographic boundary. None of this is within the boundary. So it is possible to partner with, but we cannot drain their funds. You know, they're not, if their membership chooses to donate, that's amazing. But it's that same relationship, unfortunately, that it would have with the Battery. If that gives you, and since you understand what I'm saying when it comes to that, it's just their rules and regs that they have. So it's about finding partners and common goals and efforts and building relationships within the community. That is the most important thing. And knowing that there is a lot of development that is going on all around that area, and making sure that people are vested in public space.
Well, I just,
We're gonna, sorry, finish up, Laura.
no, it's just that, you know, it's the parks that add to the parks, and of course the waterfront, that adds to the value of those residential units. And I think it's important to capture, you know, to work with the development community and get them involved in some way that, like, Central Park had a window tax that people voted on, which we were not able to get for Hudson River Park because people down here didn't want to do that, you know. And you know, it's a hard sell, but it's really worth it if we could achieve that. Anyway, Tammy, I would love to follow up with you.
Yeah, absolutely love to.
Thanks, Laura. We'll go to Paul Goldstein, who chairs our Waterfront Parks Cultural Committee. Paul?
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to be brief. I think Laura has a lot to contribute here, and I think your expertise would be wonderful. So if,
Thank you.
as you say, you could catch up
Yeah, I would
and
love to.
play some sort of constructive role, I think that would be wonderful, because you have expertise that
Thank you,
many
Paul.
don't. I understand you have a lot on your plate now, but it would be good for what you can do. What I just want to say is that, you know, this is a challenging project, clearly. You know, that's one of the things that the presentation showed. But I think we, you know, need to make certain parts of it priorities of Community Board 1 very clear. So we have to, for example, support the new market site becoming some sort of indoor recreation space, as was in that report of yours, and this community board has supported that. So I think if the community board can, you know, assert itself, as you also suggested, by both supporting the creation of this organization and, for example, supporting the new market site becoming an indoor recreation space or something of that sort. So I just think this should become, should go up on the list of our priorities to be the top or very near the top. Both those
Well,
projects.
Thank you, Paul. Delighted, we have resolutions on already supporting those two initiatives, so this is definitely going up, and when we do, as you know, in the fall budget season again, definitely agree that through Waterfront Parks and Cultural, that should be up on the list of a budget priority.
Thank
So
you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Alice?
Thanks, Patrick, and thanks very much for the excellent presentation. Thought it was terrific. It's a quick question, just who is on the working group and how is that established and how will that go forward? Is that in some way going to find itself becoming the 501c3 that you were describing earlier? And I guess that's to you, Tammy.
The working group has been a coalition of community leaders and groups that started with CB1 and CB3, the NYCHA houses, the folks at Pier 42, East River Park. Oh my gosh.
Sweet Tie and,
The EDC, Parks Department, Seaport Coalition, Historic Waterfront, David Sheldon attends.
Okay, I was curious because,
I
you know,
mean, yeah.
right.
It's,
I mean,
it's had, it has many, many groups and players. Anyone and everyone has always been welcome to come. And if anybody has emailed either community board and said, hey, I'm interested, they get stuck on the list whether they like it or not, on a mailing list. So if anybody wants to, everybody came. That is where the driving force has been to try and keep it. It is not a CB1 initiative. It is a community initiative, and the community extends from north to south, and trying to make sure that there's a holistic view and an equal view, and that everybody's opinions and voices are aired, has been the most critical thing since we started this conversation. I want to say Q1 2024, maybe? So we've had many, many meetings since then, and the 501c3, when it goes forward, will have a combination of people representation on it. It's not all set in stone how it's gonna work. It's, you know, it has to consult with attorneys, you gotta consult with EDC, you have to make sure that whatever it is a functioning body that the city is good with as well.
yeah, I think it's great. I think as it becomes more real, it would be good to make sure that those sorts of invitations get out to everyone, the Laura Stars of the world and everyone else who might be interested, so that, you know, everybody's aware as the thing goes on, that we follow how this all starts to happen. I think it's really exciting, and I thank you for those efforts.
All right, David, thank you for the presentation. It was really, again, it was a very well done presentation, and very thankful for it.
Thanks for having me.
The last of this. Okay, we're gonna move on in our agenda. Let's go to item 2, which is a presentation by the Department of Citywide Administrative Services, or DCAS, regarding the city's existing ground lease with Chung Pak, who is presenting for the city.
Anyone opposed by saying on that?
No, please do, actually.
No, please.
Thank you.
Do you mind getting the Chung Pak presentation up?
It's nice.
And if you just introduce yourself to everybody and note the owls are here, that will pick up all the audio.
And our presentation was under DCAS. It is a report says DCAS. You have it early. You do have the list. This is not the presentation. Thank you. So it's my presentation. And to full screen.
Can you move closer to the mic because it's hard to hear for those of us?
Yeah,
She hasn't started anything yet. She's just trying to get the presentation
Oh.
up.
Okay, thanks.
I can watch it from. So you can open it through.
It's just a PDF, so if you,
Okay.
it's just a PDF, there'll be a full screen option on the right hand side.
Keeps opening. From there. Put downwards. Put that. There you go.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Well, good evening, everyone. I am Colleen O'Connor Grant. I'm a city planner in the Planning, Disposition, and Property Management team at the Department of Citywide Administrative Services. We are better known as DCAS. I'm joining you tonight with my colleague Kyle Daniels. We are in the real estate line of service at our agency. And we're here to speak with you tonight about the Walker Street Chunk Pack Local Development Corporation. I'll refer to our tenant simply as Chunk Pack, and we have representatives here with us tonight for Chunk Pack. Chunk Pack has a long-term lease with New York City, and we're here before Community Board 1, seeking your support for a resolution that will allow us to amend the lease that exists between the city and Chunk Pack. This is a long-term lease, and it would be the third lease amendment. All parties are in alignment with the terms and conditions that I'll go over with you tonight. Oh, I should say, after my presentation, which is on the brief side, I will be joined by Sherman Ming from Chunk Pack for a couple of words from his point of view as the tenant. So, do you mind going forward the slide? I'll have you clicker.
I'll do it for you.
Oh, sure, sure, it's me.
No problem. Next. Nope, you're gonna have to do next by hitting the arrows. I don't know why this one's different than the last one. Oh, there you go. Next slide, please.
Thank you, I appreciate it. So I'll just explain a bit about our tenant, Chunk Pack. Chunk Pack has operations that span 2 lots here in Lower Manhattan between Baxter Street and Center Street. On lot 126, they have a 13-story mixed residential and commercial building. It's formed as a residential tower over a commercial base. In the residential portion are 88 units of low-income housing for seniors, and that's administered by HPD, Housing Preservation and Development, a different city agency. In the commercial portion of their space, Chunk Pack has subtenanted out to several not-for-profits and local small businesses. Our tenant can certainly answer more information about the tenants here, but this includes an affordable daycare provider, a community health center, a Kiwanis Club, many examples of local small businesses and not-for-profits. Also on the map is Lot 1. That was the location of the Manhattan Detention Center, the jail building that has since been demolished. And it is in that space that our tenant had approximately 5,960 square feet of commercial space. So we're going to primarily focus on Lot 1 in our discussion today. Could you go to the next slide, please? Great. So Chunk Pack has a long-term lease with New York City. The origin story essentially begins in 1985 when the city was contemplating the then new MDC jail program. So to mitigate some of the anticipated harm to the surrounding communities, the city agreed to a community facility, and that is Chunk Pack as we know it today. So the lease commenced in 1990, and it had an original expiration date of 2039. Since then, the lease has been amended twice. The first time was in 2008, and that amendment included an update to fiscal obligations, such as the creation of a capital reserve fund. The lease was amended a second time in 2013, and that updated definitions and terms, including, for example, an update to the CPI index, the Consumer Price Index. So in 2019, a lot of us here are familiar with the city's borough-based jail program. So that is when the wheels of that program really started to move, and there were a couple of ULURP actions that happened in 2019. In 2021, our tenant left their commercial space in the MDC building. And here we are now in 2025, seeking to amend the lease for the third time. And this would essentially restore the 5,960 square feet back to our tenant. To go to the next slide. Thank you. So just a brief slide about the current conditions on Lot 1. Again, this was where the Manhattan Detention Center building had been. And one of the features of the third lease amendment is that it would restore the 5,960 square feet of commercial space to the new building that eventually gets constructed there on Lot 1. Next slide, please. Just to review the lease amendment approval process with you, we are not seeking a new lease. We are seeking to amend an existing lease. And that is because the majority of the terms and conditions from the long-term lease remain in place. The key features of the third lease amendment, we'll go over those shortly, but just to let you know, the amendment approval process is outlined in the city charter, section 384B4. The timeline in front of you is our ideal timeline. It is not set in stone, but we are here in front of Community Board 1. You're our first stop. We are seeking a supportive resolution to support the third lease amendment. Following that, we would go to the Manhattan Borough Board and speak to that governing body and seek their approval. And then we would go to the mayor and seek mayoral authorization. And once that is achieved, the lease would be considered amended, and then the conditions that we are talking about would be actionable. So this is a separate process from the community facility design, build, and engagement process that I know this community board is very familiar with. Those are handled by other city agencies and other entities, and DCAS is focused on the lease itself and the terms and conditions of the long-term lease. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, this is a lease amendment, not a new lease. Under our proposed third lease amendment, Chung Pak's long-term lease would be extended until 2078, which is beneficial to our tenant and very beneficial to New York City. We feel a nice long-term relationship. The commercial-based rent and pilot payment in lieu of taxes that Chung Pak had been paying, that was approximately 1.3 million, that would be abated until they can reoccupy their space. Of the 5,960 square feet of commercial space, what is memorialized in this amended lease proposal is that that space would be formed as 5 distinct retail spaces, 4 of which would be made usable for restaurant use, but ultimately it's up to our tenant to decide what uses would happen in those spaces. But that is outlined in detail in the lease amendment. And upon reoccupancy, Chung Pak would resume paying the city its commercial-based rent and pilot. So these are the key lease terms of what we're proposing. Next slide, please. So I wanted to, this is the last slide in the presentation, so we'll have plenty of time for Q&A, but I wanted to conclude with a visualization of infrastructure. This is the 13-story building that Chung Pak has on lot 126. And it really represents the lease, right? The terms and conditions can seem a bit esoteric, but through the ground lease with the city, this is what has been achieved. And I know our tenant can speak much more about its activity and operations, but the activity generated by the lease includes rent that Chung Pak is able to collect from its subtenants, and directly or indirectly, that goes into supporting organizations that Chung Pak approves of, as well as the low-income senior housing, the affordable rents that are offered to the daycare provider and the community health center. So the benefits of the lease are not really contained to just Baxter Street and Center Street, those two lots. But if you just consider the other organizations that Chunk Pack supports, it really extends out, through Chinatown and Lower Manhattan. And in a nutshell, that's the relationship that we're seeking to preserve with the third lease amendment, which again would extend their lease to 2078. It would abate their rental and commercial-based rent obligation until they can reoccupy their space. And the primary focus is the 5,960 square feet of commercial space, which would be restored to the new building that gets constructed on lot 1.
I know that a lot of people have questions and I want to hear from Chung Pak directly. But the one thing that strikes me as odd that I don't think anyone's ever asked in this conversation, the BBJ team presents all the time and they talk about 20,000 square feet of community space, which we had said should be separate from retail. They said, no, that includes the commercial retail. Incorrect in terms of, and especially compared to what they did in Brooklyn. But nonetheless, no one has ever said or asked that I can remember in all of those meetings, whether or not the Chung Pak space that's supposed to be is included in the number that the BBJ is selling as community. It should not be. That should be just replaced. That's a different thing, not included with that. So do you know that answer? And if not, can you find that answer? Because that is.
It is an excellent question. It is my understanding that the planning for the space includes the commercial retail square footage as well as the community facility space.
Correct, but that should not include, that is separate and among the guaranteed space that Chung Pak has. So the what is it, 1,000 square feet that you said that they have when the new building is open?
5,000.
5,000 square, that should not be coming out of the 20. That should be something, that's a different line as far as I understand. Because then that would be that the community, Chung Pak had 5,000, they should be getting what was taken away from them, period, end of statement. The promises made to the community should be above and beyond what Chung Pak has.
I absolutely see where the question comes from. The community facility space it was all originally allocated, as community facility space of the 20,000 square feet. We could definitely double check the points of agreement from 2019, but I don't believe there was a separate carve out made for the retail space. It was all planned for in an inclusive manner.
But they have offices and lease agreements that they will have with agencies that have for their purposes. This is an agency agreement that DCAS, the city, as a city agency, has with Chung Pak. That 5,000 should not be coming out of the 20. So it should be 25 total. Unless pardon? 26,000 total. I mean, that's what we need to understand and know, because I don't want to we want Chung Pak to be whole.
Right.
And most importantly, Chung Pak should not be pitted against the community for any known reason. Promises made to the community are separate from the organizational leases that you have.
Correct. And their lease is 5,960 square feet of the community facility.
Yeah.
We can certainly, we'd certainly follow up and get a clear answer for you.
Does this gentleman know?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, Bruce, jump in, yes.
Yeah, I'm Bruce Pfeffer, I'm counsel to Chung Pak. And so I've been nominated, I guess, to answer this question. So
Good.
this application, and I'm just shouting so that people online.
Please, you can come to the table. You're welcome to join us. Please do. Gentlemen, no. It's holistic. We are a community. Come join. Seriously, everybody. And Rosa, if you need hot tea, because it's pouring.
Not to step on Colleen's presentation, sorry about that. And this
Do you remember
is,
this? I don't remember this.
so sitting next to me is Sherman Ng, president of Chung Pak LDC, Gary Watt, staff member, Stephanie Wong, chief of staff, Chung Pak. So as I'm understanding your question, and as I think we'd like to try to clear it up, the 5,900 and change square feet represents the portion of the the lot or the building that was on the jail site that was basically demolished,
Yes,
okay? Within that 5,900 square feet, there were 5 stores, retail stores.
Mhm.
That were subtenants of Chung Pop.
yes.
So this application and the lease amendment is only dealing with that piece. Getting that piece back, restored to Chung Pop.
Mhm.
What happens to the rest of that space is not part of our application, and we obviously don't control that. We're just looking to get back what we had.
I'd love for you to get more, but that's just, right.
Let's
And
talk.
yes, yeah, I said that on record, but the most important thing for me is to have DCAS come back to us and tell us, because the 5966,
5,960 square feet.
Right, to be exact.
5960 should be 5960 above and beyond the 20 that was given to the community. Because that was not the same negotiation, the same structure, the same anything. You tore down their stuff, you have to make them whole. That has nothing to do with the separate and holistic promises that were made to the community. Because otherwise, you're basically saying, that's just not right, period. That's theirs, that stays theirs. For the rest of the community, gets the 20,000 square foot that was promised. That's the way I interpret what we were sold. And I've been around a long ass time.
But we are seeking to restore their lease of the
Mhm.
space of 5,960 square feet of the community facility.
That I get, but that is not, that shouldn't be part of the 20. And that's what I need to have a clarification from. And as a city agency, I'm asking you to come back to us before our full board meeting on the 31st and confirm that.
Okay.
So we would need the information by like the 29th.
So 6,000 square feet approximately, ground floor lease. It needs to be at the ground, pedestrian accessible lease.
Yes, because it would restore basically the composition of the space that had been there in the old building.
Which was all stores, street level
Right, street
stores.
level stores.
Which brings me back to Tammy's point, that is the 20,000 also ground floor lease. Or can it be any?
It's a big, giant building. They could figure out, and it doesn't have to be ground floor. You know, for community space, it could be meeting space on the second floor. They're building this giant atrium, they said, in the center. I mean, they had lots of space that they said, so.
Okay, other questions from committee members, either online or in the room? Laura, your hand's up. I'm not sure if that was from before, or do you have a new question? Nope.
And by the way, Mr. Ang did have a statement that he
Okay.
just wanted to read, a very brief statement.
Yeah. Go for it.
I don't know who I am, who I am. Okay, my name is Sherman Ng, and I'm the chairman and the president of the Chongpak LDC. I'm honored to be here tonight to share with you a brief history of the organization that our commitment to the community. Actually, 40 years ago. I'm old. In the early 80s, Lower Manhattan was made up with a diverse collection of communities such as Chinatown, Little Italy, Lower East Side, Soho, and Tribeca. All live side by side, but representing people in different backgrounds, cultural and histories. One thing that united all of the communities was common desire to improve the quality of life in New York City, especially for the poor and working class people. We're different communities, but we all are New Yorkers. That's why when the mayor of the city, remember Mr. Eckhart, announced plan to build a new jail on Center and White Street, a diverse community come together in unity. Although we spoke different languages, but we spoke out with one voice. Our response to the mayor at that time was loud and clear. We don't need a jail. We need affordable housing. We don't need a jail. We need jobs. We don't need a jail. We need economic development. After years of protest and negotiation, actually, the city built the jail. But due to the unity of the determination of our community, we forced the city to create space for housing and commercial development and for the benefit of people that will live here. That's how Chong Park was born. On land that was originally proposed to be used only for jail cells, we built 88 units of affordable housing for seniors. On land that was meant to only for jail cells, we built commercial space and retail stores that provide jobs, daycare for children, health for immigrants, and other services. Over the past 4 decades, Chong Park has been a good neighbor. We participate in local events and giving support to other organizations as well. Today, Chong Park is a shining example for what can be accomplished when community come together and work together for the common good. In 2018, when the city of New York again announced plans for a new jail, right next door to Chong Park, we stood up and demand that the city take care of the senior living in our affordable housing and small business owners who are serving our community. We demand protection for the structure and our building and also for the environment in the area around our building. We also demand change to our lease with the city that we allow Chong Park continue to serve the community and being good neighbor for decades to come. After years of negotiation, long time, 4 years, the city has finally agreed to a lease amendment that will accomplish here these goals. It was not just a victory of Chong Park, but a victory of the people we serve. Now, we come before you to ask that you approve this lease amendment. Approving this amendment will not only be a blessing to Chong Park, but will pay tribute to those in our community who came together decades ago to fight for this community. As the years go by, we see that the challenges and the struggles continue. But we also see that when we stand together, hand in hand, work together, we can make this community better for ourselves and the next generation. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate the statement. And I'll note, without calling out each of the organizations, we've received a number of letters in support of the Chong Park organization and your request for the lease amendment. Someone shared this statistic with me, but I wanted to just point it out. And you noted there are 88 units currently.
Right.
How big is the waiting list?
4,300?
4,300 seniors
Yes.
on the waiting list for those
Yes.
88
Yeah.
units. I mean, it's just, that's staggering.
We're the only one
There's a lot of
low
other
income
folks.
in that area, in Chinatown area.
Mhm.
Right. Actually, it's 87, as it's 87 units, not 88. One unit belongs to superintendent.
To what?
Superintendent.
Questions online? Seeing none, is there, yeah, sorry.
Thank you for this, and yes,
There is somebody,
Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
Vera
Sorry.
would like.
Yeah, I'm just
Appreciate
Patrick.
it.
Sorry, I'm
Yeah.
having a hard time navigating this. Thanks, Tammy. I just have a question for DCAS and also Chong Park. What about the upgrades that have been promised to Chong Park, and why can that not be incorporated into the lease amendment? The window upgrades, the HVAC upgrades that were promised by the city to Chong Park in the points of agreement. Also also the improvements to the outdoor terrace, the enclosure and the solarium. Why can that not also be included in this lease amendment?
And we have the points of agreement if you need them.
here.
Yeah.
It's an excellent question. So the lease previously existed, and it is in regards to the commercial space as well as the community facility space. The other areas that you're bringing up are being handled through DDC and other entities of the city because they have to do with the construction of the building. I believe that perhaps speaking with HPD about the window upgrades and the outdoor terrace might also be a good suggestion. Yes.
Right.
There is a community workshop, I believe it's the first one that their DDC is hosting. That is July 31st. Community workshop #1. So those would also, that would be like an excellent opportunity to ask about some of the other areas, which I can't personally speak to, just we're focused on the lease at DCAS for business terms.
But
Can you
the
explain why the lease can't address these issues?
So, yeah, I mean, I think where Vera's going and where we were all going to kind of get to you is, it is very specifically pointed out in here about the lease and the points of agreement.
Yes.
So from our perspective, the improvement of the outdoor terrace and obviously the preservation of the senior housing, and the other items that are on here that are all so vibrant, as Vera mentioned, are related to the lease because it is a promise by the city. And so if DCAS is not putting it into its lease with a copy, even at a base root copy of the points of agreement, then how is Chung Pak to believe that any of it will get done? No offense.
Oh, none taken, because these are the nuances of city government. Correct me if I'm wrong, the residential portion falls under the administration of a different city agency.
I can just add that, while we would have no objection to it being part of the lease, we've been working with HPD for years now, but making progress. We don't see any indication that the city is trying to avoid that obligation. In fact, we see the opposite, that the city has been moving to finance and approve financing of those renovations to the windows, the solarium, and the elevators, HVAC. So we are moving forward on that. And so that's probably one reason why we on our side didn't really see an urgency of getting it into the lease. Of course, if it's in the lease, it's in the lease, and that's great. But I think we're pretty confident, based on how the city has been working with us, that those pieces of the points of agreement are getting done.
Would it be possible for at least the rent credits that are specifically outlined in here and the city committed to the pilot abatement for the terms of the lease, are all of those in this current thing?
Yes.
Those are in the amendment. Yeah.
And the rent credits?
Yes.
Vera?
Yeah, no, just two comments. One is, at least the points of agreement should be appended as an exhibit to the lease amendment or refer to the points of agreement. And the second thing is in response to Colleen about this July 31st meeting that we're having. That's about the design of the new Toro-based jail, and it has nothing to do with what the promises have been made to Chung Pak. So I don't think that would be exactly the right forum to discuss that. But I would think that in the very least, we can attach the points of agreement to the lease, or have it referred to into the lease amendment.
Yeah, and Vera, I'm just gonna point out that in the points of agreement, when they do talk about the 20,000 square foot for the community facility, Chung Pak is not noted or denoted in there, and they have their own separate section in the points of agreement, which leads the public to understand that one is not related with the other. So
Yeah.
the 5,960 square feet is Chung Pak specific, above and beyond the community space.
That's how
Because
I
there
saw
is there is absolutely no correlation within the points of agreement, and they're separated by several other points in the middle as well.
Yeah.
Which then puts us at least closer in line with what Brooklyn got. Jackson. Not that it's a competition, but. Yeah, no.
Okay. Other questions? Richard?
Oh, that Vera covered exactly what, much better than I would have, and could have.
All right, so we're asked for a resolution. I'm reading the temperature in the sense of the committee. I don't hear anyone opposed, so it sounds like we're in favor. And specifically, however,
With the points of agreement being in the appendix.
once we're good.
Vicky Cameron recuses.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
Okay, hang on.
Thank you.
I'll break it over.
I think there should be two points here. One, the points of agreement be referenced, release, and two, that we would. Right word is insist that the Chung Pack 5960 be over and above the 20,000 square foot. promised.
But since this is about the decast lease, I think the way that we have to phrase it in this resolution is that the community insists that the Chung Pak lease is honored as a separate, as its own entity as described in the points of agreement, unique and separate from the community space.
I know where you're going, that sounds,
Because it's about Chung Pak and support of Chung Pak, gets our point across, and we live another day to argue with DDC.
Read.
Does that work?
It does, and I will come back to the video for the precise language of those cables. Really helpful. Okay, so those two caveats which should be included as therefore be it resolved, sort of called conditions. Is that fair to say approval with conditions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Approval with modification? How do you,
It's not even work, there's no binding.
yeah,
Just for our own sense of how we work it though. Okay, so those will be conditions. I got it. Okay. Any other thoughts or points for the resolution? Okay, with that, let's call the question. All those in favor?
second,
Aye.
aye.
Any opposed?
Vicky Cameron recuses.
Any other recusals? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody. With that, we are adjourned at almost 7:30.
Got right into it.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everybody online. You want to stop the recording and we're
Good
good.
night.
Did you record that?
Yeah.
Good night.